This is just coming across on social media right now, breaking news, and will address the country later this week about next steps. He intends to fulfill the remainder of his term. Kristen, your reaction to this bombshell news?
And it's from him on...
I was just told in my ear, and that's what's breaking on the wires right now.
I think, I think it's an enormous opportunity for our party. And I always think it's really important to have two strong people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party to have a strong debate and let's figure out who's best to run this country. At the end of the day, we are all Americans and we want to move forward. I hope that my party, the Democratic Party, can use this time as an opportunity to have a debate and have somebody emerge as a candidate who can go toe-to-toe with former President Trump in a productive way so that everybody in this country has a decision to make. And they look at it and they can decide and they want to know how they want to move forward.
So we've heard 37 Democrats come forward calling on him to step aside. The money people have made it clear that they're done giving money to him as a candidate. Is it a surprise that he has reached this decision?
No, I'm just wondering what's in it for him. He's facing a lot of trouble. He needs to stay in office because of Hunter, because of his own brother. So I'm just curious what was the final breaking point that got him to agree to this? That's what I am most curious about at this point.
And I take it you're not entirely surprised, or maybe you are surprised.
I'm not. I mean, like, if you talk to all my friends who are working on the campaign, this is not a conspiracy. Like, he has been thinking about, like, what's best for the country. This is a man who's served for so many years. He's not going to stay in office to help his son. Like, I mean, he's not weaponizing the judiciary. I mean, he's just not. Like, he's a man who's served this country, and he's been sitting with his wife and his closest advisors and people that he trusts and really working this through. I'm not making it up. I mean, he's been having conversations with Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and really thinking this through. This is not a surprise to me that we all knew a decision was going to come, at some point. And so, no, it's not a surprise, given that he's been in these conversations for a while now.
And among the concerns for Pelosi and Schumer, of course, were the down ballot concerns, which is if former President Trump's going to win the White House, do you want to lose the Senate and the House?
That is a primary concern. I mean, if you're a Democrat and you're looking at this and, like, we're not going to have control of the Senate, and if President Trump wins the White House, then you need to look at the House, and you're looking at these candidates, and like I said earlier, you have to make sure that you win some of these, like, really tough seats if you want to maintain or take back control of the House. It's going to be close no matter who it is, but that's a primary concern in the party right now.
Okay, so to recap, statement on X, President Biden says he's stepping aside as a candidate. He intends to focus on fulfilling his duties as president for the remainder of this term, and he says he will address the nation later this week about his decision. Your thoughts?
Well, again, I'm just curious where this is coming from. He said the only reason he would step down is for medical reasons. If he is stepping down for medical reasons, and you're one of the only people that I've heard that have said that he would be stepping down for political reasons. He has never said, I don't think I'm what's best for the party at this point in time. He has literally said it's only for medical purposes. If it is for medical purposes, he shouldn't continue to run the party because he's putting or run the country because he's putting our entire country at risk. From a security standpoint, from a mental,
Can
from
I
a
be
health
clear? When I say
standpoint,
political reasons, it's not just nefarious. Political reasons are listening to your constituents and listening to the people.
That they're going to lose the Senate and the House, which you just mentioned.
Yes, of course. And that is how you're talking to people and how they're responding to the president.
So
there is nothing nefarious. There is nothing about this man who he has served this country for
far too long.
Not far too long. 50 years. But not far too long. He has done it. His sons have done it. He had a son who died, who had served this country in the military.
The past 3.5 years have been a disaster for this country, from the Afghanistan withdrawal to the Biden border crisis, innocent women being raped and murdered because of the open borders.
Because of President Biden.
Because of the open borders from President Biden. And so it's interesting because he had literally said earlier this week that he would only resign if it were a medical issue. And, you're saying, looking at the down ballot, it would have a disastrous effect. So it is what it is.
I would like to have a normal, productive conversation that it's not just the party talking points about what this means for how we're going to move forward from now until November and how people are going to make a decision. It would be nice to say, okay, who's going to be the person? And we should talk about whether it's Andy Bashir or Vice President Kamala Harris, or, you listed off the number of people. I would like to have a normal conversation about what are their policies, and looking forward, are they juxtaposed with former President Trump? And let's have a real conversation about that. I would like to have a productive conversation.
If you're a betting person, are you betting on the vice president?
I think the vice president has a lot of support that people, if you look behind the scenes and you've got to get the different factions of the party, everybody, Republicans and Democrats, she's got a lot of support. I think there's also a lot of support behind people like Andy Bashir. There's a lot of structural support currently with the vice president just because she's the vice president. So setting up a whole thing, that's functional, right? Like, you've got a campaign apparatus, you've got all the people on the ground. That's not going to go away. That'll just transfer over. So I think she's got a natural advantage structurally. But who knows? You've got a lot of other people who might be looking at this. We'll see what President Biden says, because when President Biden speaks about it, there are a lot of different ways. It's like, okay, does he support her? Does he endorse her? There are a lot of different, in politics, there are a lot of different nuances to this, right? He can say, I support her, right? The words matter. So when he speaks, I think it's going to be very clear. What are we looking at? Are we looking at, does he support like an open convention? I would watch every single word that he says.
To your point, reacting in real time to this news on X, he did not mention the vice president in his statement. So that creates kind of a bidding war, if you will, or some people looking to potentially jump in. We have the full statement we can show our audience. Quote, it has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down. That President Biden on X just a short time ago. We are reacting in real time here on Fox News Live. So you mentioned his statement to the nation later this week. It'll be intriguing to see whether he sticks his neck out to say, this is who I think should be the next in line. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and again, I think that the Democrat Party has quite the conundrum moving forward. Again, Kamala Harris has very low polling and approval rating, especially compared to Joe Biden. It's lower than Joe Biden's, and he's stepping aside because he can't win those down ballot races, according to some of your points you made. If you have an Andy Bashir, if you look at Kentucky, if you look at that race, even the people in that state, the only reason he won was because of his name in that state. Every other statewide candidate in that Kentucky race got more votes than him, so you'll likely have a Republican governor in Kentucky. Same thing in North Carolina with Cooper. You look at Shapiro, you have the far left part of the party who are literally turning out people to vote uncommitted because of this administration's stance on Israel. I mean, you're in a really tough spot. I feel bad for the Democrat Party at this point.